Greetings everyone, this is Enraged Eggplant and welcome to Dungeons and GURPS. In this video I will tell you how to make D&D dwarves in GURPS. GURPS already has several dwarven racial templates that have some quite significant differences. But since they are not D&D dwarves, I suggest you make your own templates. There are almost as many dwarven sub-races in D&D as there are elven ones. And just like the elves, most dwarves have very similar racial traits. Sure, there are some outliers such as the Dergars, the wild dwarves of Faerun, or Korobokurus, but everyone else more or less is only slightly different. In my personal experience, I think I've been adjusting the racial templates of my dwarves most often. Hell, I made the last revision that was quite significant half an hour before writing the script. Let's go over the Hill Dwarf race from the player's handbook and see how we can represent their traits in GURPS. First, dwarves get a +2 bonus to Constitution and a -2 penalty to Charisma. Let's give the template a +1 bonus to Health then. How do we represent the Charisma penalty? I really do not like assigning mental disadvantages to racial templates. Typically, I treat them as something physical or biological. But for the dwarves, I make an exception. I give them stubbornness. I feel that this personality trait is iconic enough to have its place on the template. Next up, we have size. In D&D, dwarves have medium size, despite being 2/3 the human height. In GURPS terms, where size modifier is mostly based on height, dwarves should have a size modifier of -1. That's also what dwarven templates from the GURPS basic set and GURPS Fantasy have. However, the dwarf template from GURPS Dungeon Fantasy 3, the next level, has the dwarves at size modifier +0, just like humans. The book justifies that by saying that the dwarves are broad enough to compensate for being shorter, but still mentions that armor made for dwarves and armor made for humans is not interchangeable. Personally, I prefer my dwarves with a size modifier -1. After converting dozens of D&D races, I was surprised to find out that there's just very few SM-1 races. Most of them tend to be either human-sized or halfling-sized, which is SM-2. Making dwarves SM-1, and dwarves being one of the most common races, should really improve the SM-1 representation in the game world. Also, dwarves being SM-1 creates some interesting interactions. They will be better at fighting bigger creatures due to their size difference. And that's flavorful, because dwarves do have some bonuses when fighting giants in D&D. One other thing to keep in mind is that dwarves will need dwarf-sized weapons. These will be lighter, cheaper, but rarely worse in terms of damage. They will be worse for parrying, which kind of reinforces the stereotype of dwarves wielding unbalanced weapons and shields, because they won't really be parrying that often, due to the risk of having their weapon broken. They still will be able to wield weapons made for humans, but at a -1 penalty that can be mitigated with a perk. Dwarves are slow. Let's give them a -1 penalty to basic move. Player's Handbook also says that dwarves are not slowed down by heavy armor. I like to represent that by just giving the dwarves a level of lifting strength. They will be able to carry heavier weights. Also, since they are SM-1, armor will be lighter and less expensive for them. Combined with the dwarves having no strength penalty and this lifting strength bonus, it should be much easier to have a dwarf wearing heavy armor. That's one additional reason to have the dwarves have SM-1. The dwarven lifespan corresponds to extended lifespan 2 in GURPS. Dwarves can see in the dark. GURPS dwarven template all have night vision 5, which still leaves them light dependent. I prefer to give them infravision instead. Dwarven stone cunning ability feels a bit too gamey for me. I believe that dwarves should just have a point or two in the masonry skill, but this feels more like a cultural trait than a racial one. But if you really like stone cunning, you can build it via the detect advantage with the reflexive enhancement. Weapon familiarity, like I said in the video about elves, is cultural. I do not include that in the template. Stability can be represented with a sure-footed, uneven perk. It's actually a very useful perk that comes up in my games from time to time, so it does not feel like a waste of a point. Dwarves are resistant to poison. They already have a +1 bonus to health, which increases their poison resistance, but if you want to emphasize them being resistant to poison specifically, you can give them resistant to poison +3 for 5 points. That's a significant bonus that does not cost a lot. Dwarves have a bonus to resist spells. You can give them a level of magic resistance, preferably with the improved modifier, but I prefer to give them a +1 bonus to will instead. This is up to you, as both traits cost the same. Bonuses to fight goblinoids and orcs are lame, and I skip them. Bonuses against giants are sort of covered by the dwarves being SM-1, and hence being harder to hit. Racial bonuses to appraise and craft checks related to stonework and metalwork can be represented with a level of a talent, for example Artificer. I do not include this on the template just to make it cheaper, but it really is a very thematic talent. I also give the dwarves 2 more perks: Alcohol Tolerance, just because it is very appropriate, and Can Sense Depth Underground. Dwarves are said to be able to sense how deep they are underground, but it is not represented mechanically in D&D. In GURPS, this should be appropriate as a perk. And this is the final result. As you can see, we managed to make the template cost exactly 30 points, which is very much within the playable range. In the past I used to give the dwarves a penalty to strength, but give them more lifting strength, hit points and even additional fatigue points. But that strength penalty made them feel very weak and undwarfy. That's why I removed it. Using this template as a baseline, you can create the templates of the various other dwarven subraces just like I did. I hope you enjoyed the vid, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.